This is another edition of Talk Your Exposure featuring an extremely special guest, someone that I've learned a lot about over the last couple months. Owner of TPG Sports Academy, also Elvis Dennis Sports Academy, Sports Training Academy, my apologies. Elvis Dennis is in the building today. How you doing, man?
I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed. Appreciate the intro. Little wordplay there. So it's TPG, the Performance Group Basketball Association. I am a co-founder, founded that club alongside my cousin Alfred Brown, who you've met. And then, the Elvis Dennis Training Academy, which has kind of been up and running for as long as I can remember. I've always been kind of giving back to the youth and whatnot, and just kind of more formalize it in the most recent years. But yeah, blessed, man, considering the circumstances. I know we're in the midst of the pandemic. So staying nimble and staying active has been key, not just for physical health, but obviously the mental health of myself and the players within my club and so forth. So it's just, making the best of a bad situation.
Well, definitely. What did 2020 taught you? You touched up in a little bit. So I just wanted to ask you straight up, what did 2020 taught you?
Man, 2020 taught me that it is important to have a strong network. I guess maybe I shouldn't say that it taught me that. It just reaffirmed that. I've always been an individual who cultivating long-term relationships. Just words from my past that your network is your net worth. So in 2020, recently had to really tap into my network in order to have things continue to run as close to normal as possible. Obviously, we all have accepted that there is a quote unquote new norm. But most definitely, that's one of the things. Like I said, it's not necessarily new teaching, but just confirmation that your network is key to and vital to your success for sure.
No, I mean, that's the biggest thing about it, man. Like you said, mental health has been a key component to this entire pandemic, and you've heard it even not just from people like you and I who are regular schmegglers, but the NBA players that talked about it as well. We talked about the NFL players too. So mental health in itself is so important and so keen that I kind of got to ask you as well, being a coach and being someone that's been around for so long, what's the importance of keeping our players, or keeping your players in general, just keeping them positive, keeping them, trying not to forget that we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, how important it is to take them off that mental aspect of life and keep them going.
Oh man, it's extremely important, and I actually think that that's one of the pieces that our leaders or our government has missed. I get it. We're in a pandemic. People are dying. People are falling ill and so forth. What those numbers really look like, I don't know. I would be lying to say that I know exactly what those percentages are. I know that it's a small percentage of the population, and even smaller population of the youth, percentage of the youth population. So to take away, close gyms and shut down programs where kids have an opportunity to be active in an era where being active is not normal, I think that really is a detriment. I mean, many people don't know this, but I do a lot of work at the Sick Kids Hospital. With troubled teens and kids of that nature, and they've seen a spike in the amount of admissions that they have for kids who unfortunately have attempted to take their life during this pandemic. So I mean, it's unfortunate that the sports and recreation industry is taking a hit. I definitely know it's affecting kids. Like I said, we are in an era where being active is not the norm. And back when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, being outside and playing different sports and things of that nature, that was the norm. We're in a video game era, computer era, technology era. So a lot of kids are spending a lot more time inside. And unfortunately, because they're spending so much time online, their peer group is essentially, they connect with their peer group online. And for those that do use sport as an outlet, for that to be now shut down, it's obviously a very difficult thing, and the numbers are showing that. So I try to tell my kids, or the kids that I come in contact with, whether they play for TPG or not, to hold yourself accountable. You know what I mean? Find a way to be active, whether it's just in your house, you're running up and down your steps, or in the basement, whatever it is, just find a way to stay active.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And that's the biggest thing right now is understanding that component of depression. Because like you touched on, the reality is depression is hitting an all-time high right now. And especially with it now being wintertime, this is a typical season where, depression is at its all-time highest. And for us to be going through a pandemic, I don't know if you know the stats or not, but I actually have suffered from depression myself. And I'm someone that has been going through a lot of that stuff myself as well. So to be able to I look at the stats for that. I don't really look at the COVID numbers because, to be honest, I don't care. But I look at the depression numbers, and it's actually gone up about 30%. Just in hospital admittance, suicide. Those two things in general. Like the fact that there's so much about that right now, and I feel bad for these kids, man, because I couldn't go through this when I was 15, 14. 13. I wouldn't be able to. I would go through a lot. So to hear that, from your side of saying like, yeah, you work there, you see it. It's almost like these nurses these days that are seeing like COVID patients coming in and out and talking about COVID in general. And you know what I mean? So I just kind of hope that this is all kind of done soon, and I wish for the best for this to be done, man. But moving on. I'm kind of glad you touched up on technology a little bit, because I wanted to ask you. We do live in an era today of technology, and you kind of gave a really good breakdown the other day of what to look for when you're looking at mixtapes and stuff. Talk us a little bit about your opinion about mixtapes and stuff like that of today's era, and what your opinion is of mixtapes.
With everything, there's good and there's bad. So, I'll touch on the fact that what's really great about a mixtape, it is an amazing way to catch the eye of your target audience, right? Whether it be your peer group, or whether it be college coaches and college scouts, or even just, scouts in general, right? A mixtape pops up. Anyone can make a mixtape, right? Again, you see the power of technology in the music industry, right? And it's actually helping in some cases in the sports industry, right? Where a 14-year-old kid can go to the gym. He's got a phone. He's got a buddy. His buddy may not be a hooper, but his buddy knows how to hold a phone and follow him around while he's doing made-up drills and, come to a game. And I know in high school, I used to pay a kid named Duncan, $5 to come and record my high school games. This is back when it was like VHS and VCRs and things of that nature, right? But just think about that. All my friends at the time were hoopers, so they're on the court or they're on the bench. They're not an ability to record a game. So I was paying a guy Duncan $5 to come and record some of these games, so that I would have something tangible to be able to send out to schools at more post-secondary schools, because so I think there's a great benefit to a mixtape. Literally in the span of 24 hours, you can go to the gym, you can put together a mixtape of your kid just doing a drill, or footage from games. Now on the flip side to that, it's false advertisement a lot of the times. I know people are like, what? Yeah, it's false advertisement a lot of times. A lot of times when I watch these mixtapes, one thing I shared with you that I look for is how many times does the defender's jersey color change, right? So it's like, okay, it's a 60-second mix on Instagram, and in that 60 seconds, there might have been 8 or 9 clips, and the defender is wearing a different color jersey every time. So it's like, is the kid really good, or did he have one good move in each of those 8 or 9 games? Yeah. So that's one of the things that I personally look for when I'm looking at a mixtape is this all happening in one game? Is this happening over the course of 2 games? Or is this just like a collage of all this kid's greatest moves ever over the course of 12 months? And I've seen this happen where I see the mixtape, I'm like, damn, homie looks good. And then I'm at a tournament and I stick around to watch a game. I'm like, okay, he ain't it. Like that. That's not what I was. That's not what I stayed to see. He could be having a bad. He could be having a bad game. But I definitely think it's useful and helpful, because you're able to, like I said, in the span of 24 hours, get something out there in the world. I think it's great for kids. There's a fear factor, right? Sometimes, you see a mixtape, you're like, man, that kid's really good. And people start liking and following and commenting. That could boost the kid's confidence. And now he walks into the gym and he has a psychological advantage over his competitors, because they've seen his, and I've witnessed this as a coach. And I've yelled at players for this, because I see them standing around in warmups watching this mixtape guy warm up. It's like, you got to play against dude. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be in awe of dude. So it's like I said, in everything there's good and bad. I'm from the old school era. We didn't have mixtapes like that. It was like, yo, you got to perform. Like, dudes coming to tape a game, you got to put in work. Because how often can you buy a VHS? They used to come in packs of threes, right? But again, you were fortunate if you had parents who were in support of your athletic aspirations back then to even buy you the VHS tapes. And then, like I said, paying a guy $5 and then buying stamps. And it was just a whole different process. So I love the fact that technology is where it is right now. I use it as well. Yeah. So, I mean, like in closing with the whole mixtape thing, like I said, I have two sons who hoop, and I let them know flat out, like, if you want a mixtape, cool, just go out and perform, have a really good game, and you'll have yourself a mixtape. But like I said, I'm not finna be chopping and editing 15, 16 games for 60 seconds of fun, because it's not happening on my end. But again, I love it, man. It's a great way for your kids and coaches to get their players exposure, no doubt about it.
And the reality is, and like you touched on before with the VHS, is nobody wants to watch 60 seconds of VHS.
No, it's not, like, I don't even know if people have anything. So I was on Kijiji, and I seen there was a guy offering a service to be able to transfer footage from VHSs, I guess, into a more modern way of viewing. So I might hit him up, and because my kids sometimes they forget that I played, so I might have to go and get some old footage converted.
Interesting. So you talk about your high school a little bit. You said you had a guy come out and record you. From what I see when you play now, like, I can only imagine how you were back in high school and grade 9 to grade 12. Talk us a little bit about what the best part of your high school basketball career was, and the enjoyment of it. And if you can go back to it, what would you change if you're in today's era playing with today?
I mean, man, what I loved everything about my high school experience. There were a lot of challenges, just with my family moving and stuff like that, and having to switch schools and get acclimated to new coaches and new systems. Not all coaches are the same. I was more of a flashy type player. I guess you could say. I like to get buckets and kind of do my thing, and that didn't always rock with the coaches that I was playing for. There are coaches that were more system guys, right? So they would say, don't be the offense, be a part of the offense. And in my era, I had no mentor, I had no trainer. Like, it was just watch VHS, the one that I watched the most, Michael Jordan Come Fly With Me and NBA Superstars Part 1. I would watch those tapes. I would go in the basement, or I'd go on the driveway, and I would try to replicate. NBA Superstars Part 1 was an amazing video because it had like Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Dominique Wilkins. Like, they had a lot of great players that all had different styles of play. So I was, taking little pieces from each of those players and trying to cultivate my own style. But in high school, I thought there was not just here in Brampton, but across the GTA. And not being in the social media era, you would only see and hear like what you see in here. So you would read the newspaper, and you see a guy like Junior Brown or whatever, who's at Bathurst. He might have had a game where he had 30 points and whatnot. Jerome Robinson. So Malton's a part of Peel. And Westwood and Morningstar, they pretty much ran the basketball scene back in my day in terms of like Peel championships and stuff like that. But being able to read about those guys in the Toronto Star, or see them at a tournament and see what they're doing, that was the motivation behind kind of working, and that was the excitement. That's what I enjoyed most about high school is the constant competition. Like, there was a lot of really good basketball players back then. So knowing that, every weekend you're gonna get a chance to go up against some top dogs and measure yourself. So that was great. What would I change about high school?
Just from what you know from then to now, like, how would you be able to? Sorry, let me actually rephrase that question. How would you combine the two eras together?
I mean, if I could go back and do things differently, then I would train, right? Okay. Like, I would do dedicated training. Like I said, I was playing a lot of ball. I was playing ball every day. Like, I didn't get introduced to the sport until I moved back to Canada from Jamaica. And my cousin Alfred, who I told you I co-founded TPG with, he was a big time hooper back in the day. And he's the one that kind of gave me my first basketball, and I would watch him do some stuff in the basement. But no one was ever like dedicated training. You just go to the park and get picked up, and you kind of just figure it out, play a lot of American, figure it out. So I would do that differently, right? I would take a more focused approach to building my skill, like the kids have the opportunity to do now, right? They have a lot of guys who played before them at a high level who can teach them the nuances of the game and how to be really effective. Bobby Allen was like really the first guy. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was at Terry Miller drop-in, and Bobby Allen was back for playing overseas, and he was just in the gym just killing guys. And I was doing my thing too, but he pulled me aside and was like, "Look, man, you're a good player, but you're doing too much. Yeah, you're burning yourself out, right? You're scoring, but you're doing so much to score, and I'm watching you, and you could do so much. You could do a lot less and still score." So he was the first guy that I like spoke to me and made me think about changing the way I played. And then it was more about just getting it done, getting to my spots, saving my energy for other facets of the game like defense and so forth. So how I would I guess mesh the two is I would sprinkle a little training component into back in my day where it's like you come to the gym and you're getting up a certain amount of shots as opposed to coming to the gym, throwing your jeans off and getting into a game of American with 8-9 guys, right? So I would do that, and then again I would bring some of that to this era. Like I think I've shared this story with you, where I say, okay, we're gonna play American. The kids have no idea what I'm talking about, and they're foreign to the concept of just one ball and 8 or 9 guys playing one game on one rim, because those games are physical games, right? And it forces you to really do everything. You've got to rebound. Like no one's there to pass you the ball. So you're playing American, you have to go and rebound. You just have to. And if you can't rebound, then you got to go play the guy who has the ball and try to get a steal. If not, you're not going to get an offensive possession. So I would incorporate some of that into this era, because this era right now for specific because kids become robotic. And I see it because I'll see a kid on Instagram, he'll do a move on Instagram, which works perfect on Instagram because it's cones and they're not moving. But then he'll come down in a game and try the exact same move just because he's done it so many times. So he's not doing the move to successfully beat his man. He's just doing the move because his body has done the move so many times. So I feel like the kids aren't playing with a lot of feel these days. They're more robotic and they're just doing certain things that they've been taught. So that's how I think I would mesh the two eras is by doing that.
For sure. It's funny you talk about American too, because it kind of reminds me of when you play American, you play like the bad boy Pistons. You beat one defender, you see Bill Embiid, you see Mahorn, or whatever it is. So it's like you always gotta to figure out a way to pretty much beat 7-8 other guys, like you just mentioned, right? And that's the toughest thing about today. People don't understand. One-on-one isn't always so bad, but they don't understand what to do when they beat one guy. And you're 100% right about that. So I'm glad you touched up on that. To be honest with you, I'm glad you touched up on that.
Decision. I just feel like American really increases the players' decision-making skills. I tell my kids, I'm training. I'm like, I'm gonna give you enough that 7 to 8 out of 10 times you'll be able to beat your guy one-on-one. Right. The real question and how you're recruiting in terms of like just overall kids wanting to go D1, it's going to be like, okay, you beat your man 7 out of 10 times. How many of those times did you make the right decision with respects to shooting or passing? Right, floaters, pull-ups, like, or because guys will beat their man and then just go too deep. Right. And then now you're amongst 3 Bill Lambiers that are looking to lay you out, where, you beat your man. You could have had a little runner or pull up from just below the free throw line and avoid all that. Right. So like I said, that's why I love the game of American and what it did for, my game and others around me. That's kind of I think the biggest factor in our development.
While you were in high school, who was the toughest person that every night not every night, but whenever you saw him checking you, who was the toughest person that checked you?
Dude named Brian Benjamin. Brian Benjamin from Heart Lake Secondary School. Okay. Tough guard, but he like before wingspan was a thing, right? Okay. Anyone who knows Brian Benjamin knows, dude had like a crazy wingspan for a guard. So it was I didn't like playing against him because every time I thought I had him beat, somehow he'd get those arms in the way. And I think my top turnover games were probably against Brian Benjamin.
Right.
Yeah, so I think he would probably be the guy that I say was, kind of the most annoying to play against. Not difficult. I didn't really have a hard time in high school, really. I mean, I know it sounds cocky or conceited, but it is what it is. I get out there and do my thing, man.
So after your grade 12 year or after, last year of high school, or did you have any looks from United States? And if not, or if so, who? And if not, what about Canada?
Yeah, one scholarship opportunity, and that was to Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach, Florida. It really wasn't until like my 11th grade that I even thought that was possible. And the reason being, my sister got a track scholarship, right? So we were living in Florida. And then my family moved back here. My sister stayed in Florida. She kept doing her thing from a track and field standpoint, and then got a scholarship. I had a few offers and then accepted a scholarship. So that's when I was like, okay, I could probably do the same. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. And this is why I press the kids all the time in terms of your schoolwork, right? Books before ball. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like back in that era, that was not it. Like I wasn't putting the books before the ball. I wasn't failing or anything like that, but I definitely wasn't taking school serious. So again, if I go back in time, hindsight being 2020, I would have taken school a lot more serious than I did back then. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was just doing the bare minimum, and unfortunately, that came back to bite me in the tail. But nonetheless, you live and you learn, and you can pass those experiences on to others. And then Canada-wise, so when that didn't pan out, I actually kind of just a lot of my close friends and high school teammates, they decided to attend Sheridan College. So, of course, they were like, yo, come to Sheridan. Coach Flack, who was the head coach there, and then he was a coach there, and he had reached out. I had known him because, again, through my last year, he was recruiting some of the guys for my team. And I already knew some of the guys that were there that were like pure legends, like Shane Bosco was there, Brian Harris was there. The year when I decided to attend, Mike Joel transferred from Niagara College. There was a dude, Mike Elaine, who was at Hawaii, who was going to be there. Like the team was just my year off while those guys were playing. Like I said, I had former teammates on the team, so I would go watch them play. Coach Flack did a great job keeping me engaged. He would send me postcards. Like if they went on a road trip, whatever, they were in Montreal, he would send me a postcard from Montreal. So I felt wanted by Sheridan. And like I said, with the connection that I had and then knowing the guys that were already there, I'm all about competing for championships. So I felt like if I went there, we'd have a good chance at that. Now, my experience there wasn't how I envisioned it. But again, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Playing time is important. But it's important to be on a team where you really like the guys that you're playing with. Because when things don't go your way, you're not salty, right? There are games where I played 2 or 3 minutes and we won, and I was happy like I played 30 minutes, right? Because I'm being real, right? Because the guys who I was rocking with, the guys who are on my team, like these are my friends. I have real relationships with these guys. So even though I'm not the guy out there, dropping bombs, 20, whatever, I'm happy for my guys that are, right? Because like I said, I feel like if they're out there killing and I'm in practice, I'm killing them, like I know where I'm at. And, people say, don't be cocky. And I tell people all the time, when people are confident, it doesn't mean that they're cocky, right? Like there are certain things or guiders or that I look for, right? So I'm like, okay, if Kevin Durant's supposed to be the man, like best in the world, LeBron best in the world, and I could play against that person, I can hold my own, you know what I'm saying? Or I look at our stat lines aren't very different, then I feel like, okay, I'm in that category. And that's how I looked at it. Even though I wasn't playing, I wasn't worried about what people were saying because I had already had a body of work. So like I said, my first year at Sheridan, I didn't expect to not play big minutes, but I didn't. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about preparation, game preparation, and what it took to be a collegiate, a high level collegiate athlete. Right, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that, with respects to your pregame routines. And just how you approach the scouting report and knowing who you're going to be playing against and their tendencies. So in that year, although I wasn't playing a lot of minutes, I was learning a lot about the game of basketball.
Of course.
Through Coach Flack, through Leroy Casanova, and then, of course, the legendary Nicky Davis, who, to me is one of the greatest coaches.
That's a name right there.
Yeah, man.
That's a name right there.
He don't get nearly enough credit for his involvement in basketball in Canada. But I'm telling you right now, Nicky Davis is one of the realest and best coaches out there. So shout out to Nicky Davis, man. He did a lot for me as a player, and we have a great relationship to this day. And like I said, network, right? That's what this sport also is important for kids to understand, that through this sport you can cultivate relationships that will benefit you down the road when the ball is no longer bouncing for you.
We're actually going to get back to Nicky Davis in a second, because I do have a question for you about Nicky Davis. But I want to ask you, Sheridan in general, you were there for 2 years, 3 years?
4 years.
4 years. My fault.
4 years at Sheridan. Yeah.
So in your 4 years there, you talked about your first year. You weren't really playing that much. Let's talk about your second, third, and fourth year and how you were able to come off that adversity and be able to say, you know what, I'm here to fucking play. I'm here to hoop. And I don't really care about nothing else. I just want to hoop at the end of the day. How did you take that, your anger? I don't even know if you were angry, but for lack of a better word, let's take that anger and build it to motivation.
Yeah, 100%. So it wasn't really angry, just more frustrated, because like I said, I felt like I could play. And at that time, I'm young, and I'm coming off a great high school season, things of that nature, where I felt like I was rocking. But one of the best things that I did is, I respectfully went to my coaching staff and asked, like, what do I got to do to get more minutes? Right? I wasn't asking like, yo, why are you not playing me? Because it's easy to see why. Like, there's 12 guys on the team. You have a two-time All-Canadian. Yeah, I think Shane might have been a two-time All-Canadian at that point. You have Brian Harris, who was in his senior year and had been leading Sheridan to championships. You had Mike George, who was in his sophomore season, but in his freshman season was like first team all this, first team all that, Niagara MVP. Like, we had hoopers. So it's understandable why it would be hard for them to give me minutes, right? I'm playing behind a lot of top guys. But the best thing I felt like I did is, when and I had that conversation with them, and I use that philosophy to this day, right? Coach Flack wrote a triangle, and at the peak of each triangle, he had a letter. He had an O, he had a D, and he had an R. The O for offense, the D for defense, and the R for rebounding. And he asked, like, which one of these right now are you elite at? Would you say you're the best at on the team? Well, at the time, I wasn't the best scorer on the team. I wasn't the best rebounder on the team. So really the only spot that I could have been the best at was defense. And that's kind of was my focus. I'm like, okay, if you're saying these are the three things that equate to minutes, and I can't be the best rebounder on the team, and I can't be the best scorer on the team right now, I for sure as hell could be the best defender or one of the best defenders on the team. So that's why I started to focus my energy. Right. And I felt like when I started doing that, I would see some things. So I get in the game, generate a couple of turnovers, which leads to some easy, quick offense. And any good coach, if you're generating turnovers and shutting the best player on the other team down, he's probably going to find minutes for you. So transitioning into and I've always been a defender, right? It's just, I've never been more focused on it. I never had to focus on it because I was always getting minutes. So going into my second year, I took that as a massive focus. Like, I'm going to be the best defender on the team. But of course, guys graduated, guys transferred to universities. So that in itself gave me an opportunity to get more minutes. So I went from, one of the last guys off the bench into a starting role. Now I'm getting the opportunity. I'm producing. Things are on the up and up. And then it just kind of continued to build from there, right? Third year, my third year, I think we had 7 freshmen come in. Right. So that was a challenge in itself. Now, this put me in a position to really show what I've learned the past 2 years under guys like Brian Harris, who was a great leader for our team. Right. So I picked up a lot of things, like I said, in my first year sitting, watching how he was a floor general and what he'd do, how he would sacrifice his personal opportunities for the betterment of the team. So I took that mentality into my third year. And we ended up in the national championship game that year, and we had 7 freshmen on that team. And yeah, I mean, I won a bunch of awards, individual awards and so forth. So that was probably my best individual season at Sheridan, and my role changed again in my senior year. But again, ultimately, it was about getting the championships, winning championships. So in my 4 years, we won 3 Ontario championships. I think 2 bronze and a silver medal at the national level. So every year we're in the hunt, right?
Yeah.
And long story short, by the end of it all, I was playing big minutes. I was a big part of the program. I think my senior year team has the record for most wins, least losses in a season. And then I was inducted into the Sheridan College Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. My kids walk in, or even the kids that I train, and they'll look around and see my name on a banner like, hey, is that you? And so it's a great story because I didn't cut and run. And then I give my mom all the credit for that because there were other colleges that were reaching out heavy for me to leave Sheridan. And my mom was like, yo, I'm going to support you in whatever decision you make, but just understand that if you leave Sheridan, everyone's not going to know the reasons why you left. So a lot of people are just going to be like, yo, you weren't good enough to play at Sheridan. And I wasn't having that. I didn't want that. I didn't want that as my rep. So, my mom, has a lot to do with me sticking it out. And I know in this day and age, kids go through a little adversity and the parents pull them and they jump ship and they run to different programs. And people think, I know a lot of parents might think that I'm a bad guy or I'm a mean guy. No, I went through it. Like when I look at a kid, and this is why I'm saying I would never change my experience for anything. Because now when I look at a kid and I'm telling him like, yo, you can do better. You are better than you were showing, but it's going to take time. And you know what? You got to grind it out. Don't just cut and run. If I'm not playing you, it's not because you're not a good basketball player or won't be a good basketball player. It's right now you're not being productive as a basketball player. And it could be as simple as confidence, right? All these kids click at different times in terms of their confidence. But unfortunately, parents, they ain't trying to hear that. Parents think because they pay a fee that their kids automatically are entitled to play. And I'm not with that. So, I rather coach a losing team with people and players who buy into that philosophy of like, you get what you earn, as opposed to, hey, you know what? I'm a part of the team. I deserve to play just because. Yeah. So, but that's my story, man. Rags to riches, so to speak.
We're definitely going to get into your coaching as well. But one thing I want to ask you is, what is the biggest thing that first of all, congratulations to you for being inducted into the Sheridan Hall of Fame. Second of all, this is a two-part question. Do you go back to Sheridan? Do you ever go back to Sheridan to watch them play to this day? And also, what has Jim Flack taught you as not as a basketball player, but as a coach too?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not as active in the Sheridan community as I once was. But I definitely go back. I go back. I literally would go and chill with Coach Flack for an afternoon, just kind of pick his brain about basketball stuff. I guess if I could say the number one thing that I took away or that Coach Flack taught me about basketball is preparation is key. The preparation is so key to your success as a player, as a coach. Because again, if I'm going to play against someone and he has certain tendencies that I don't know about, we get in the game, he can kill me with those tendencies. But simply by them scouting and them pointing out the tendencies, I can prepare for those and I can adjust to limit the individual from doing those things. I can disrupt those tendencies. And that in itself makes me a better basketball player, or will make it seem like I'm a better basketball player. So you ain't got to be the quickest person to be be a good defender. If you know what the guy's favorite move is and you can figure out a way to disrupt that, then he'll miss shots. And if he that day happens to go 4 for 15, you've done a great job. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes it's rhythm. You see guys, they have rhythm dribbles. If you could disrupt their rhythm, it throws their shot off. You know what I mean? So it's not because I'm all of a sudden 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan and I'm contesting shot. It's just little things. And you, like I said, we've been in the gym over the past couple of months, and you see, I take pride in defense, and I'll really watch guys when they're playing 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or whatever, just to kind of see if I can pick up on their tendencies. That will help me. Right. So that's I think the most important thing that I've taken away from Coach Flack from a basketball standpoint is preparation is key.
So you transition from playing at Sheridan, now you become a coach. You start off your coaching career with CIA Bounce or CIA or Bounce, one of those three. Mike George brought you into the fold. Talk a little bit about your personal experience as a coach, the adversity and things of that nature.
So Mike George is a college teammate of mine. Became probably my closest college teammate in the year that we were there together. And again, in high school, we were like enemies for whatever reason. Like, I never even really talked to the dude. But again, our era was so competitive that, there were guys in Brampton that are like, oh, Mike George better than you, and whoop-de-whoop. So there was that tension, I guess. But once we got to Sheridan, we realized that we had a lot of things in common in terms of what we believed in as humans, more so than anything else. When we wrapped up, he started CIA out of West Humber Church or Humberley Church in Rexdale. Had some guys and whatnot. So he asked me to come in and kind of help out with some of those kids and so forth, and I did. And then through competition, he and Tony McIntyre and Derek Boyce as well as a co-founder as well. They teamed up to create CIA Bounce. And then, we had a lot of guys in the fold that were helping out over there. And obviously, Bounce, we did what we did at the time. We had a lot of good players, a lot of good success stories and stuff like that. And guys have kind of transitioned on from there, gone on to do different things. Obviously, Mike George is an NBA agent right now, one of the top agents in the game, putting on for the city, no doubt. Represent, obviously, guys like Jamal Murray and Dylan Brooks and guys from, the GTA area and stuff like that. So still one of my closest friends to this day. Still very competitive between he and I. But my time and my experience at Bounce, man, was great. Like, so many great experiences, so many great stories, being on the road with the kids and stuff like that. And, at that time I was still pretty active and could play. So it was nice busting those kids up. Xavier Rath and Mays is one of those guys. He was always trying to come at me. So we had a lot of fun while we were on the road. Nas Long, again, was one of those dudes too, real competitive at a young age and stuff like that. So it was, like I said, man, a lot of great memories being with that program for sure.
I know that Tristan Thompson played over there as well. I know that Anthony Bennett played over there too. Andrew Wiggins. Did you ever get a chance to coach those guys, or just the guys you mentioned?
Yeah. Really, my first AAU experience, I was on the coaching staff with Mike George, Nikki Davis, Derek Boyce. Mm-hmm. And that team, there's 13 guys on that team. Mm-hmm. So we had Anthony Bennett, Sim Bullar, Negus Webster Chan, Andrew Wiggins, Nas Long, Jared Skeet, Martin Dixon Green, Deshaun Pierre, Richie Peterson, Nick Lewis.
Wow.
Who am I missing? Man, that team was so deep, so stacked. Like, being on the road with those guys was fun because they all had great personalities. You had guys who were from Scarborough. You had guys who were from, Brampton, Mississauga and stuff like that. And, that was a dope experience. And obviously to watch, several of those guys, Stefan Jankovic, I forgot about him. But a lot of those guys have had stints with NBA teams, whether it be summer league or preseason or the actual, big show. Some of those guys have actually stuck. Obviously Anthony made history being the first ever number one pick from Canada. That was pretty dope. And then followed by Andrew. So yeah, man, it was dope times. Like that was my first
That's crazy.
first AAU experience, right? What an experience, like, you know. But again, it's funny that you're talking about that. I bring up that team. So now here we are, fast forward, and I watched how that team, how everyone on that team was able to get to where they wanted to get to by being a team, right? I just mentioned a lot of talented guys, so you could imagine, you know, not everyone was playing 20 something minutes a game. But I love a guy like Nas Long, a story like him, you know, where, you know, he's probably the eighth or ninth guy off the bench originally, but then, you know, kind of worked his way up and some games would start. But in an EYBL game, I think we were playing Team Takeover or Mac Irvin Fire, really top program. And Nas took 5 charges. Nas took 5 charges in one of those games. So you can imagine we're at Peach Jam and the sideline is lined with Division I coaches. And here's Nas like taking 5 charges in the game and just facilitating the offense. And, you know, like I want to say on his Fred VanVleet shit almost. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then he goes to Iowa State, plays 4 years at Iowa State, and is now kind of, you know, in the NBA G League. He's back and forth getting called up and stuff. And why I bring that up is, again, for the kids of today to understand that you don't have to be the first, second, or third option on your team to achieve your goals, right? You're on a good team, and you're going to be playing at a high level. You're going to be playing in front of what I call basketball people. So you could play for 5 minutes and they know, oh, yo, that kid can play. And they understand the structure of a team, right? You're going to have your first, second, and third option. Then you're going to have role players. And you see it more and more today in the NBA, where a guy like Luke Kennard, who most kids have probably never even heard of, but he signs a 4-year, $64 million deal. The kid Alex Caruso from the Lakers, you know, Jared Dudley. There's so many guys. So I say all that to say this. Kids, you're on a team. Fill a role, be productive in that role, and continue to work towards your long-term goal. But if you really want exposure, you're not going to get exposure being on a bad team. So you got to learn to play with other good players, right? I'm not saying to go and find the most stacked team and, you know, do that. But I'm telling you right now, just being, from my experience, being on the road, the top college coaches and recruiters come to the big games. You know, they're not going to be at the 8 o'clock bronze medal game. You know what I mean? They're going to be at the 4 p.m. semifinal or final game. And you're probably not going to get to that game unless you're on a team with other really good players, right? So learn to play with other good players, right? Exactly. Don't just be the guy who can only play with the ball in his hands, right? Understand how to play the game with other good players.
That was very well said from the legend himself. From the legend himself, man. That was very well said. Kind. Very well said. I do want to ask you though, what were the practices like for that team? As you mentioned, you know, there's a lot of good guys around that team. You know, Andrew, Anthony in particular being NBA guys, Naz an NBA guy, or up and down NBA guy. X is an up and down NBA guy. You know, you had Stefan Yankovic even in there that was up and down NBA guy. Negus up and down NBA guy. Sim. NBA guy. So that already right there, I've just named 7 guys who went to the NBA or played in the G League or Summer League or whatever it was. What were practices like? How intense were they? How much shit talking was there throughout the practices and just how fun was it as a coach to be able to be part of those practices?
Man, like I'm smiling already and I'm getting goosebumps because you're bringing me back to those days, right? It was unbelievable. Because again, we didn't just have practices with those guys, right? There were days where we would have the gym booked out and guys from other younger teams. So, you know, you just mentioned a bunch of guys, but then you had guys like Tyler Innes in the fold, Kevin Zabo, who at the time was a phenomenal talent as well, who was in the fold. So there were a lot of other guys. Dylan Brooks, we didn't even mention, was in the fold at the time, right? Troy Knight-Reed, who was like, again, one of my favorite players at Bounce because of his dog-like and defensive first mentality. So there was a lot of talent within the club. So yeah, it was intense without doubt. And obviously all those guys have their own sub cliques outside of the gym who are all gassing them like, yo, you're the man. Like, you're the man. So they bring all that to the gym and, you know, they have a coaching staff who shares the same mentality. Like you ask Mike George, he's going to tell you, oh, I'm the man. I'm better than Elvis. You ask me, I'm going to say the same. And then we were in a playing shape at that time, so we would also compete, and they would see how we would compete against each other. So it was a very competitive environment, but a very like loving and like committed environment. You know what I'm saying? Everyone legit had each other's backs and would ride for each other, and I think that's what kind of made that era so special. Everyone was willing to sacrifice for one another during that time. So the practices were amazing. I mean, you know, like I think at 1.5 of them were at the Pangos All American camp in LA. Like we went for EYBL. We were on the EYBL circuit. Then 5 of them stayed back. And for the whole week, we were just there training and stuff like that. And like everything was a competition, like a real competition. There's free throw drills, shooting drills, like just everything. So loved it, man. It was an amazing time for sure.
So my last coaching question for you, and we're going to move on to a different topic. What is it like coaching your sons?
Challenging. Challenging. And why I say that, and I mean, I do feel bad for them at times because they're held to a higher standard than all the other players. People might say, oh, that's not fair, but it is what it is, right? I'm not only the coach, but I'm the co-founder of the club that they play for. I come from it, again, I keep saying I come from an era where everything is earned, right? Nothing is given to you. So here I am, I'm coaching my kids and stuff like that. I see the game I see the game differently than the regular spectator. So I'm getting on my kids for things that I see that others don't see and they would never understand. But because I play at a high level, I'm coming from coaching guys that are in the NBA, so they were playing at a high level. There's certain things that I see and mistakes that I don't want my kids making that other kids get away with because they're not my kids. I don't want to yell at them and you know, kind of go crazy on them. So it's difficult. It's challenging because I know sometimes it affects how they play. And I have 2 sons and they react differently, right? My younger son, I can get into him and stuff like that. And he plays better. Like sometimes it's almost like he needs me to do that to get him going. Whereas the older one, he kind of shuts down because it's like he feels as though he's not pleasing me. Right. And he hasn't understood that we're just in battle right now. I'm still proud of you as a person and you as a player. But in the here and now, we trying to get this win. I need you to perform a certain way. So it's been challenging. You know what I mean? No doubt about it. I would say that's what it is coaching my boys. It's a challenge. So I've kind of learned to, you know what, step back. So I stopped coaching my older son and kind of let others kind of coach him. I still get in the gym and train with him. But again, I've opened him up to other trainers and stuff like that. Because I do believe that it takes a village to raise a child, and different voices are instrumental in the development process of all kids. You know, and people have asked me, like I have family and friends, you know, I train and they're like, well, why would you bring another trainer in? Like, because they think that might affect, you know, my bottom line, if you want to call it that. But I'm really about the kid first. Like I never got into basketball because of money. It's just a passion of mine. And I was doing it for years for free, and I would continue to do it for free if I had to. Right. But challenging. To answer your question, coaching my own kids is challenging. I think any father who coaches would say the same.
For sure. So now let's touch up a little bit on TPG. What made you start TPG?
The politically correct way to say it is to provide a quality platform for the individuals who really want it and don't have it right now. What I mean by don't have it right now, kids develop at different times, different paces, right? And I just felt like the way things were going with, you know, other clubs and stuff like that was, okay, you're not good right now. We can't play you right now. You know what I mean? And that is difficult for a kid's confidence, in my opinion, right? Like it's difficult to sit on the bench because, like I said, I shared my experience with you, right? But I was, 18, 19 at the time, right? I had already had a body of work that I felt was good enough for people to not look at me like, yo, that guy's a scrub. But you talk about a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, and they have peer groups, and, trashing each other is a common thing.
Right.
right? And we talked about the whole mental health piece earlier in the conversation. So that's really why I decided to start TPG, man. It was just to provide a platform to give kids an opportunity where they felt safe and could grow. Now there might be parents out there be like, "Oh, that ain't what happened when my kid was there." So again, it's everything is with the context, right? You get to a point in time where you're playing for specific reasons. So there's times where you're playing for developmental purposes, and then there are times where you're playing for achievements and accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the regular basketball family understands the difference between the two. And that's why as TPG, as a club, from the onset, we decided that we would play in two competitive channels. We would play CYBL and we would play OBA, because we knew that OBA would give a platform where there's equal playing time across the board. And we try to balance our schedule so that we have the same amount of CYBL games as we do OBA games. Because then a parent who's complaining about playing time, I can our schedule and say, hey, look, we played 20 OBA games where he would have played at least 12 minutes a game, right? And if anybody knows, if you're on a team with 10, 11, 12 guys and you're playing 12 minutes a game, that's a lot of minutes, right? That's a lot of minutes. I know people may not think it is, but when you have a team of 10, 11, 12 guys and you're playing 12 minutes a game, like what's LaMelo Ball, the number 2 pick? What's he playing right now? He's probably playing 15 minutes a game.
15 minutes a game.
Do you see my point? Yeah. Right? So that's important. But that's why I started TPG. And again, I had some bad experiences where I placed my kids somewhere and what we were told we were going to get, we didn't get. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was a problem for me in terms of, I'm shelling out this money, but I'm not actually getting the value that I was told that I would get. Yeah. And then again, just being involved, volunteering. I volunteered a lot of my time, but was never in a decision-making role. So it's like, that's a difficult thing for me because I'm a basketball junkie. I feel like I've been around a lot of high level guys, both college and NBA. So I do think I have a lot of good insight that I could share. I'm not saying I have to have the final say, but it would be nice to be at the table when certain decisions that are being made that affect obviously my immediate family and then just the basketball community in general. So not being in that position, I was like, all right, now it's time for me to do things my way, so to speak. So that's how the Performance Group Basketball Association came about.
For sure. No, I love that, man. I commend that, and honestly I wish you guys nothing but success when we're able to, play again and get back to normal. So I love that story, and that's a phenomenal story. I can't wait to post that one, to be honest with you. That's not one of the first things that you were a part of. Was starting with in terms of just generally, you also helped start the We the North campaign that's kind of going on right now with the Raptors, even in particular. Talk to us a little bit about how that started. Talk to us a little bit about what got you to be a part of that, and also what was your best memorable part of the We the North campaign.
Okay, so let's be clear, right? So I didn't start We the North. I didn't come up with the tagline We the North or anything like that. So let's just be clear on that. Okay. There are certain individuals, Dustin, Jeremiah, there's so many guys and females involved in that project that were really instrumental in that project. How I got involved, so like I said, one thing I learned throughout my basketball journey was to cultivate relationships. My parents have always told me, speak your mind. Like if something doesn't feel right, seem right, don't be afraid to say something. So through those teachings, I heard that they were having this shoot, a casting call, right, for this particular project that would later be known as We the North. So I got the info. I show up. There's a bunch of hoopers there and whatnot. So I walk in, and naturally, hoopers do what they do. They greet each other,
Yeah.
So I didn't show up right on time. I was a little bit late, fashionably late, I guess you could say. Um, and when I walked in, guys were showing me love. So I'm like, yeah, what's up, what's up, what's up? So long story short, a dude comes up to me, and I guess he was like the producer or involved with the production team. So he comes up to me and he's like, hey, man, what's up, man? You seem pretty popular. Like, what's your name? He's got a clipboard. All right. So, jokingly, I say, I'm the legend known as Elvis. So, he chuckles, right? I don't know if he was chuckling about the legend part or the Elvis part, because let's be real, guys. I'm a black guy named Elvis, right? Go figure.
Okay.
So needless to say, he kind of chuckles or whatever. And he's like, all right, man, cool. But really, like, who are you? So I'm like, no, really, like, I'm the legend known as Elvis. My name's Elvis Dennis. Right. So, of course, he kind of writes it down. He thinks I'm joshing him. Justin Darlington was actually there, like standing next to me at the time. Just Fly, one of the best dunkers in the world, obviously. So he's standing there and he's cracking up, and he tell dude thinks I'm lying about my name. He's like, nah, I'm like, dude, his name is really Elvis or whatever, right? So he's like, okay, so how do you know all these guys? Long story short, I tell him like, yo, I hoop, whatever. So we're there, and they start the casting call, and it's a hot mess, bro. Like, there are girls there in leotards, like dancers. And this is the thing, right? I'm not from that space. I'm not from the entertainment space and stuff like that. I'm more of a hustler. I'll get my hands, I'll dip my hands into anything. So I'm there and I'm looking. There's like, I don't know how this is going to work, because you have real hoopers in the building, and then you have like these girls who are in leotards, who are dancers or actors, but they want a gig. This is what they do full time. So we're supposed to play 3-on-3. And obviously it's a big bag of talent, so it looks like a hot mess. So when things don't feel right, you speak. So I asked the guy, I'm like, look, man, like, what are y'all trying to do? You know what I mean? Like, what is this ultimately going to be? And he starts sharing the concept of what is supposed to be We the North, right? And he's telling me, and I kind of got this look on my face, like what he's telling me sounds great, but what I see in the casting, I'm like, there's no way they're going to be able, to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I guess he could kind of sense from my body language, my facial expressions, that something wasn't adding up. So he asked me, like, okay, be real with me. What do you think? So I said, I think the idea, the concept is a great idea, great concept, but I think you're going to have like a ridiculous time trying to pull it off because of like who you have here. Yeah. And then that's when he was like, okay, so what do you think? And I'm like, I think like for this to work, you really need real hoopers. Like, you can't just rely on actors for this to come together, not in an authentic way. So again, just speaking my mind, boom. So he says, okay, yo, do you mind sticking around for the afternoon? And I was like, I had some plans, whatever. Why would I need to stick around? He's like, oh, well, I want you to meet the rest of the production team. I think your insight is extremely helpful. I think we might be able to bring you on to this project. And I was like, oh, word? So I'm like, all right, cool, I'll stick around. Stuck around. They came. They showed me the full out storyboard of what they're trying to do. Again, met with some of the people. I shared what I shared with the other individual, Jeremiah, and they were like, "Okay, look, we really want this to work. We only have a 2-week window to make this work, because the Toronto Maple Leafs were in the playoffs and they had lost to the Boston Bruins. They choked. I guess they were up 3-1. I don't follow hockey, but this is kind of how the whole thing came together. The Raptors were going through a rebranding phase that was supposed to happen the following year. But then when the Jays were out the playoffs and then the Leafs choked, MLSC decided to speed up this rebranding of the Toronto Raptors, because the Raptors were actually in the playoffs. Yeah. So long story short, they called me back for a second meeting. And I gave them my resume as a hooper and kind of just, my connects within the city. And then, I became a consultant. I became one of the lead consultants on that project. And then we kind of changed things around in terms of how to mesh the two, because there's two worlds. There are the hoopers of the world, and then you have your fans, the guys that work, the executives for RBC and Rogers, and those are the guys that buy the tickets, go to the game. Like, those are the people you see. So they're fans of the NBA. They're not necessarily fans of basketball. They're fans of the NBA and the entertainment aspect of it. How do we bring those two together? So having done business and been in the business sector and had a mentor and stuff like that, I had some pretty cool ideas, and they thought so too. And they brought me on board as a lead consultant. And I started reaching out to guys that I knew that could really hoop, and the project came together. And set the city on fire, man. And here we are 6-7 years later, and we the North.
So another two-parter to that. First of all, is it kind of cool that you're a part of that, and to seeing the Raptor, people wearing shirts, and you go downtown Toronto and you see spray paint "We the North" in red, and even before every Raptors game it says "We the North," and in the Raptors, I forgot what it's called, open gym, they have "We the North" as their slogan and everything. Was that cool to know? Like you're right, you didn't start it, but you were a big innovator in that. And also, who was the coolest person you kind of worked with in that as well? Was there any NBA guys you worked with in that too, or just production?
Yeah, no, I mean, even there were NBA guys in the commercial, but they were kind of just cut. They weren't like on set or anything like that. But again, too, right? Like I had already had a connection and affiliation to NBA guys prior to that. Like, a good buddy of mine, Marcus Banks, was drafted in 2003 as a lottery pick, right? Probably that's considered might be the best draft next to like Jordan's draft or, Kobe's draft, right? The 96 draft. So I was already, familiar with, NBA guys and stuff like that. To be honest, the coolest people that I met on that or throughout that project were the actual guys, the producers like Stuart McIntyre and Jeremiah and Dustin and, those, because this was a whole new world. And what I really loved and admired about them is that here's a guy who has no experience in their space, but they were literally taking and asking me my input and then legit on the fly altering and doing what I'm saying I think makes the most sense, right? That was amazing for me because they didn't have to do that. And the truth be told, not a knock to my culture, but that's not normal in my culture. And when I say my culture, the Black community, right? It's very much, I got to be the man. I got to be the man in our culture. So for those guys who had the budget and all the experience to turn to me for my insights and then utilize those insights, those were the coolest people that I met during that experience. And, I'm still in touch with some of them to this day, which I told you about, network, right? Yeah. So, they're pretty, very, very cool experience. Like you said, here we are 6-7 years later. Everywhere I go, it's We the North. Right? That campaign won awards and stuff like that. So to be a part of something like that, that's for, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because I don't see the Raptors abandoning We the North anytime soon.
No.
Right? So it was cool to be a significant part of our history, here in the city for sure.
And that was also kind of a big change of Canada basketball in general, right? Like just Canadian basketball, how many NBA players got into the NBA now. Like you said yourself, Anthony Bennett started it all off with the number 1 overall draft pick. How do you feel of Canadian basketball today? Just kind of the evolution of basketball. I know the Raptors have definitely helped it with winning the championship last year or a couple years ago. But how has the progress of Canadian basketball changed from when you started coaching Andrew and those guys to now?
Oof. The spotlight's a lot bigger. The opportunities are more abundant. And that's a big part. And that's like, I think how do I put this? The Vince Carter effect is real, without doubt. You talk to Tristan, Corey, those guys, they grew up, Vince Carter, whatever. But here's the truth. Vince Carter wasn't in the gym with those guys. Right? I think Canada basketball is where it is today because a lot of the kids that we're seeing hoop right now and do well are what I consider second generation hoopers, right? Like my parents are immigrants to the country, so they didn't play sports here, and so I learned the sport when I got here. But now they're individuals, and I'm not at all saying I'm taking full credit. There's plenty of guys. Mike George, Nikki Davis, who I mentioned earlier, myself, even you guys, Cy, David Tyndale, Cedric Carter, Vlad. There's so many guys right now who all hooped at a high level. I mean, like, post-secondary, some guys semi-pro and stuff like that, who are now directly involved with the development of these kids from a young age, right? So if you talk to any of the guys that are in the NBA right now, they would have been coached or trained by someone who played post-secondary or semi-pro basketball at some point in time in their grassroots youth development phases. Right. So that's why I think Canada basketball is where it's at today, is because prior in the US, so I had cousins and friends in the US whose uncles had played Division I basketball, whose uncles had played overseas. And so these are the guys that they were learning from, you know what I mean? Or you look at it like New York City, there are guys who were from New York City who had made it to the league, who were still coming back to their neighborhood, playing outside. So they were able to inspire and kind of give nuggets back to those kids, right? So in my time, like I said, Bobby Allen's the only guy that I can legitimately tell you took time to tell me something basketball related to make me a better basketball player, right? Whereas, like I said, now the kids that we're talking about, they have lots of guys around them or access to guys who have played at a high level or have been around guys that played at a high level, who now can, kind of pass that knowledge and teachings down to them, which is why I think we are where we are as a community. The Vince Carter effect is a very real thing, no doubt, but I think the bigger aspect of that is, again, like guys like Rowan Barrett and Steve Nash, that's RJ's dad and RJ's godfather. Yeah. Like, come on, man. Dudes around those guys at 10, 11, 12, they're telling him things that most kids won't ever hear until they're like 17, 18, 19 years old. Exactly. Right. So that's why I think Canada basketball is where it's at today. And it's great. And I think it's going to continue, right? Soon in the next 5-10 years, when you look at the draft, the first 30 picks, I'm not exaggerating, 10 of them will probably be Canadians, right? 10 Canadians, 15 Americans, 5 Europeans. The numbers will be like that. And you kind of see it right now, right? Year after year, we have guys that get drafted. Guys are undrafted, get in the league and still doing work, which again just highlights how much talent we have here in Canada. And it highlights how our youth development system is built. It's still a long way away because again, they just look, the pandemic hit and everyone's scrambling for facilities to work out of, right? And then, you have a facility like Game 6 Sports Academy, which is a brand new facility, an amazing facility, but you have 5, 6, 7 clubs all working out of the same space. So we've made some progress, but there's still lots more to do in that aspect.
Do you think that Canada basketball will ever beat the U.S. in the Olympics?
Yes.
Yes?
What? Yes.
How? Who, when, where, when, why?
Okay, I say that because, again, having attended the Hoop Summit, right, where the world plays the U.S. and stuff like that, the world has beaten those guys several times. And year over year, some of the top producers on those world teams happen to be Canadian. Right. And then you see now we have over a dozen Canadian players in the NBA. Right. And when you look at, I'll use Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell, that duel that happened in the bubble. Right. Many would say Jamal got the best of him. And again, the team won and stuff like that. And now you look at Shea, who is doing his thing now. To that 26, 27, 28-year-old piece. And they're already competing with those guys. So I think, I think we're going to have a team that everything will align and we'll have the right coaches that can really bring the best out of these guys. And we will beat the U.S. at some point in time. I can't pinpoint when, but I definitely believe that will happen.
So if you choose to not answer this, I will completely erase this part of the message. Boy. How did you feel about TSN highlighting Elijah Fisher as a big-time Canadian superstar and quote-unquote one of the faces of basketball in Canada?
I mean, honestly, Elijah Fisher is somewhat of the face of youth basketball in Canada. Like, he's a highly ranked, I don't know where he ranks right now, but I know at one point he was ranked number one.
He's number one in his class.
Oh, okay, so he still is number
He's
one,
still number
right?
one.
Yeah, and this just goes to show, right? Like I don't follow rankings all that much,
Yeah.
but I know he was ranked number one. Happy to hear that he's still ranked number one because again, there's a spotlight on our country, which means there's a spotlight or potential spotlight for other kids to be
Mm.
seen. So I love that, and I would agree that he is the face of youth basketball in Canada because he's number one ranked player in his class. Which is a pretty deep class, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, right? So that's an accomplishment. Um, what I didn't like was some of the sound bites that I believe were used more for marketing, right? Like when they say a talent like we've never seen before. Like I'm a little stuck on that one because um, Andrew Wiggins was just
Yeah.
playing high school ball here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's tough to say I've never seen a talent like this before, knowing that Andrew Wiggins was literally just 6-7 years ago in high school. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And what Drew was doing in high school.
Who played with Cy, by the way? Sorry, who played with Cy, by the way? Ed Bond.
Yes, correct. And again, it's not a knock to Elijah the player. He's a
Right.
phenomenal player, no doubt. But I think pound for pound, if you were to ask people, who would you take, Elijah Fisher in high school or Andrew Wiggins in high school? You're probably going to get Wiggs
Yeah.
majority of the time, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think that, with all the infrastructure that we have in place, that he has a legitimate shot of accomplishing his goals of being a Division I athlete and then ultimately moving on to the NBA. Nothing is guaranteed, nothing's promised, but he seems like a worker, right? He seems like he's willing to put in the work. And like I said, we have the infrastructure and the machine. Like there is such a thing as a machine. He's got a buzz and stuff like that. We're all pushing and rooting for him, as we should. As a community, we should all be pushing for him and others because the more of our kids that get through, the easier it is for the others to get through, believe it or not. So I love that. What I loved most, though, let me be very clear. What I loved most about that piece on Elijah Fisher was more so the family unit. Like TSN did a great job of highlighting a close-knit family unit. And I thought that was bigger for our culture than anything else, right? Because there is a stigma in the media, and I don't want to get too political or too deep or whatever, but I can't help it. There is a stigma that, Black families are broken families and things of that nature. So it was really nice that they highlight that. It wasn't just all about basketball. Yeah, they were talking about basketball, but there was a bigger message. And I hope that others picked up on that message, right?
I like that. I really like that. I really like that. And like you said yourself, any Canadian in particular right now, we should all be on the same page. No matter what race you are, no matter what religion you are, no matter what it is. If you're Canadian, you represent the red and white flag. We should all be together and say congratulations to you, congratulations to you, congratulations to you, and not hate on them. And I feel like our country in itself right now, we're big on hatred. We don't really support as much as we should be supporting. And a lot of people want to. And I'm not saying you. I'm not saying anybody in particular. I'm just saying Canadians in itself, as a whole, hate more than love. And I feel like if all our coaches can kind of come together, youth coaches, youth brands, everybody can kind of come together and say, listen, we're rooting for you, we're rooting for you, we're rooting for you, we're rooting for you. I think the basketball community in Canada will be a lot stronger than any basketball community in any other country. You know what I mean? And that's just my personal belief. And I would like to know your take on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I believe that there's strength in numbers. You know what I mean? The unfortunate truth is this is a business, right? There's a business aspect to this. And that drives a lot of people's decision. And that sometimes doesn't pan out to be the greatest decision when you're making decisions based upon money and finances and stuff like that. I remember, like, again, when Nike Bounce lost their EYBL U17, like there were guys that were celebrating that. And I just found that so strange that guys were celebrating that. Because when you think about it, a regular roster would have 10 to 12 guys. Well, that's 10 to 20 at the highest platform, right? So for me, I didn't like that guys were celebrating that, and obviously I had some history there, right? Being with Bounce, so seeing that they kind of took a dive and weren't producing like they were in years past. That was a little tough to swallow and accept. But like I said, I remember people celebrating and rejoicing when they lost their U17 EYBL spot, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Right, that's 10 or 12 Canadians that are no longer going to be seen at that level. Right, so I thought that was kind of silly, but that's just my take. I believe in people just being transparent. You know what I mean? Be transparent about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And if someone is willing to help, then they help, right? But I just feel like sometimes we're not as forthcoming as we should be with information. And then that leads to soured relationships. And then that leads to competition, that leads to hate. And that's why we're not where we should be, in my opinion.
I agree. Couldn't have said it any better. One last question related to Canadian basketball. Nick Nurse is now the coach of Canada basketball. How do you feel that an American is coaching the national team compared to a Canadian?
Well, let's see. In some aspects, it's good because he brings a certain level of notoriety to the team.
Yeah.
Right. Like this again, just Nick Nurse. Okay, he just won an NBA championship. You know what I mean? He's bringing a certain level of credibility and notoriety to the program. Mm-hmm. I believe we have capable coaches, right? We have capable players. We have capable trainers. We have capable coaches. So I don't like the fact that, we're not like a third world country, like Jamaica or Dominican Republic, who's underdeveloped and under-resourced. Yeah. So you go out and you hire a Calipari or whatever. Like, we're not that. So yes. I personally don't like the move. I don't have anything against Nick Nurse. He's not Canadian. And I just feel like, it's our national program. I feel like we have capable guys in Canada that could get the job done. This is my personal opinion.
It kind of bothers me on the fact that we have, don't get me wrong. I'm a diehard Raptors fan. I'm very happy that Nick Nurse is a coach and he's a very good coach. But it bothers me on the fact that Steve Nash is now a head coach of the Brooklyn Nets and didn't want to take on the role as coach for Team Canada. I think that could have been a better fit, in my opinion, just because, Canadian, and it's also Steve Nash, two-time NBA MVP. But again, like you said, it kind of helps us a little bit because it's Nick Nurse. But whatever, that's a whole other topic for another day.
Yeah. Tough one.
Last some quick hitters for you to finish off the show. First question I want to ask you is, who's your top 5 artists of all time? We're going to finish off the show now with some quick hitters. First question I want to ask you is, who's your top 5 artists of all time?
Bob Marley, Peter Tosh.
Okay.
I know that's going to catch everyone by surprise. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, golly, Jay-Z.
Okay.
Nas.
Okay.
And then Biggie. I mean, like that's pretty easy, I guess.
All right. Top in order, best to worst. Jordan, LeBron, Kobe.
Jordan, Kobe, LeBron.
Okay. Why?
Man, that's a whole nother segment, man. That's a whole nother segment, man.
I got you.
Yeah, it's a whole nother segment, man.
If you could
but in the long and short of it is, the first 2 that I mentioned, they did it. They won the more traditional way, right? Like really climbing the mountains and going through whatever obstacles and adversities were thrown their way in their setting. That's really the long and short of it all. But I respect and rate what Bron has done, more so for what he's done for the culture and the game outside of the court. Right, I really loved how he shifted the power that the players have. So shout out to Braun. He's big time. That dude is a legend, no doubt, man.
For sure. If you could pinpoint one of the youth in the NBA right now, one of the second or third year guys, who would you say has a long career ahead, and who would you say you're looking forward to watching?
The kid Dort.
Okay.
Kid Lugance Dort. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right or not. I think dude is going to be easily do 10 years. I think he's going to play 10 years or more in the NBA. Everybody knew he already had an NBA body and stuff like that, but I think some people are like, oh, he might be undersized, whoop-de-whoop, tweener. But his ability to play defense, man, right? And then he showed spurts of offensive ability. Yep. And I say this, when you become a pro and you have all day to work on your craft, if you're really serious, you could really transform your game. Tristan Thompson is a great example. His body type, right? Like you would think he's going to put on weight, this, that, there. But, he made a commitment to his body, right? And as a result, he's been able to play this many years and be this productive. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't think anyone thought Tristan, even though he went number 4, I don't think anyone thought Tristan was going to be as productive or have the type of NBA career that he did. So for me, like I said, I've seen the kid Lou Dortz over at the Athlete Institute prior to him, going to NBA and stuff like that. And I always loved what I seen. Just a bring your pail to work type of guy, willing to do whatever it takes. So I'm excited to watch his career. And he's one of those guys I think that's kind of still under the radar.
With that being said, Coach, it was an honor to have you on the show. It really was a lot of fun to talk to you and get to know about your insight on why you started TPG, why you started, or your basketball career in general. Just Canadian basketball. Get all your insight. You're definitely someone that I particularly respected, and since I got to know you past couple months, I've learned a lot from you in itself. So I just want to say thank you for your time. But can you let our fans and viewers know where we can find you on socials?
Social media. Let me see. What in my hand? It's crazy, right? I know, it's so old school, man. So yeah, you can follow me at EDDoesit25. So EDDOESIT number 25. That's more like my personal account. So EDDoesit25, as well as ED Training Academy. That's my skills and development academy. So some pretty cool content coming your way for 2021 there. And of course, TPG basketball, which is obviously the rep side of things for us. So we're TPG basketball on Instagram, ED Training Academy on Instagram, and EDDoesit25 on Instagram.
Make sure you guys go follow him. Make sure you guys go check him out. He definitely has a lot of good content over there. One of the best shooters at his age group that I've seen. And
at his age group. I like that.
Definitely. I really meant what I said. I really appreciate you taking your time to talk to us today.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing, both yourself and Cy, RWI. Like I said, man, I don't know how you guys get all these young cats with all this skill involved, but I see what y'all are doing over there, man. I rate it.
We're trying, man. We appreciate your time, man. Thank you for your time.
Blessings, brother. Blessings.